All right, welcome to today's explainer. We're going to dive headfirst into a massive cultural confusion that I can pretty much guarantee affects every single one of us. We're unpacking this fascinating research report called Gods Don't Shrink. And let me tell you, it completely dismantles everything we've been talking about confidence and humility. I mean, we live in a society that constantly tells us to play it small, just to be polite, and they call that humility. But what if suppressing your true potential isn't a virtue at all? What if it's actually a profound mistake?
Think about it for a second. Have you ever shrunk yourself just to make someone else comfortable? Have you ever sat in a meeting, known the exact answer to a problem, and just stayed quiet? Or maybe you've downplayed your own achievements just to avoid threatening someone else's ego. Yeah, we've all done it. We put on this performance of smallness because we think it makes us look like good, relatable people. But as we're going to see in this explainer, this kind of behavior isn't just exhausting, it is literally holding back human progress.
So let's start with part one, the core distinction. Society has essentially handed us this completely false choice. It collapses three totally different states of being into one giant confused conversation. See, we often think the opposite of humility is ego. But ego, that's just a fragile defense mechanism. It's an inflated self-image that absolutely needs external validation just to survive. And because we are so terrified of looking egotistical, we swing wildly to the other extreme, false humility, which is basically just shrinking yourself to appear non-threatening. Let's be real, it's a dishonest social strategy, a performance designed purely so people will like you. But true confidence? That is a whole different ballgame. True confidence is having highly accurate self-knowledge combined with this deep inner stillness. It's the natural vibe of someone who has actually done the inner work. It doesn't need to dominate the room, but it absolutely refuses to shrink, mostly because it doesn't need anything from anyone else to remain stable. Moving right along to section 2, the spiritual consensus. Now, you might be thinking that religion and spirituality are the main culprits here, telling us all to be meek and small. But if we actually look closely at the ancient texts, a totally different picture emerges. The Bible, for instance, sets up this brilliant paradox. On one hand, Psalm 82 boldly declares you are gods. I mean, Jesus even cited this to defend his own divine nature. But then, on the other hand, James 4 commands humble yourselves before the Lord. So what's the deal? Well, the instruction is actually a massive yes and. You are meant to operate from your full divine capacity and simultaneously attribute the source of that capacity to something way bigger than your own personality. The Apostle Paul modeled this perfectly. He explicitly said he worked harder than everyone else, totally owning his incredible output, but then he immediately attributed all of it to the grace of God. And when we zoom out and look at the broader archive of human spiritual wisdom, the consensus is just stunning. Whether you're looking at Vedanta distinguishing between the false ego and the true divine self, Buddhism warning us against ego clinging while totally elevating our Buddha nature, or Kabbalah separating the blocking shells from the divine spark, the verdict is 100% unanimous. Literally not a single major wisdom tradition teaches that suppressing your genuine gifts is a virtue. Not one. They all agree. The divine within you is real, so don't shrink it and don't take the credit for it. In fact, hiding your capacity isn't just frowned upon, it's explicitly warned against. Take the parable of the talents in Matthew 25. It's the perfect example. A master hands out talents to his servants. A couple of them multiply their gifts, but one guy just buries his in the ground because he's scared. And the master, he doesn't pat him on the back for being modest. No way. He straight up calls him a wicked, lazy servant. The theology here is crystal clear. Hiding your capacity is not some form of virtuous caution. It is essentially spiritual dereliction. And what's fascinating is how this ancient spiritual warning bridges so elegantly into modern psychology. You've probably heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? That's where people with pretty low competence wildly overestimate their abilities. But there is a much less discussed phenomenon called the Dunning-Kruger Inversion. This is where people with extremely high competence actually underestimate themselves, specifically because they are acutely aware of what they don't know. It creates this tragic paradox. The smartest, most capable people in the room end up paralyzing and silencing themselves. They mistake their own accurate awareness of their limits for a total lack of expertise. Which brings us to section 3, the cost of hiding. So, what actually happens when highly capable people choose avoidance over confident elevation? Like, what happens when they let this knowledge gap intimidate them into staying completely silent?
Well, the real-world consequences are pretty devastating. First off, when you play small, innovation just stalls. If you look at history, breakthroughs happen because someone believed in a crazy vision and stood against the consensus. Not only that, but standards collapse. Think about it. When high performers suppress their output just so they don't make others uncomfortable, excellence becomes practically invisible. Mediocrity suddenly becomes the ceiling for everyone. Healthy competition dies because there's no high bar left to reach for. And ultimately, it just breeds this false solidarity, this really condescending assumption that other people are just too fragile to handle your brilliance.
All right, moving into Section 4, Science Meets History. We've spent some time on philosophy and theology, but let's ground this in some undeniable empirical data and historical proof. Albert Bandura's research on self-efficacy is a total game-changer here. It proves that calibrated confidence consistently produces better outcomes across the board. The data actually shows that true humility, meaning an accurate self-assessment, is linked to leadership effectiveness a massive 84% of the time. But get this, performing false modesty, that is actively linked to reduced achievement 72% of the time. Let that sink in. Pretending to be less than you are actively sabotages your impact.
So, you might be asking, what exactly is the right way to be humble? Well, it all comes down to intellectual humility. It's definitely not pretending to be uncertain when you're actually certain. Instead, it's having a highly accurate calibration of what you do know and what you don't know. It's keeping yourself open to updating your beliefs when new evidence comes in without your ego throwing a massive defensive tantrum. You can be absolutely fiercely confident in what you know while remaining incredibly humble about what you don't. These two things do not compete at all. And history's absolute giants show us exactly how this plays out in the real world. Making a transformative impact requires the confidence to hold a position most people completely reject, but paired with genuine humility about your own limits. Take Nikola Tesla. He made incredibly confident claims about AC electricity, but maintained a humble attribution by completely deferring on his business acumen. He knew that wasn't his strength. Or look at Marie Curie. She confidently stood by her scientific findings against an entirely male-dominated establishment, yet she remained rigorously open to experimental contradiction. That right there, that is the exact formula for changing the world. Let's pull this all together in Section 5, the operating framework. Okay, so now that we have the theory, the theology, and the history down, how do we actually apply this in our daily lives? Here's the playbook. Step 1, know what you know without apology. If you've put in the hours and done the work, acknowledge it internally. You don't need to dramatize it externally. Step 2, attribute upward, not inward. If your abilities are exceptional, recognize that you are simply running the current. You aren't generating it. Give credit to the source, the architecture, whatever grace gave you that gift. Step 3, let the work speak without the performance. You don't ever need to announce your level. Your exceptional output will do all the talking for you. And finally, step 4, elevate rather than dominate. Genuine confidence pulls other people up. It raises the waterline for everyone around you, instead of pressing them down just to establish some arbitrary hierarchy. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a powerful thought from Marianne Williamson. She famously said, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." I mean, it hits the nail right on the head. The ancient scriptures, modern psychological science, and perennial wisdom traditions all agree on this one profound truth. You were built with a very specific capacity for a very specific purpose. Expressing it fully is quite literally what you were put here to do. So I'll leave you with this final question to chew on. Will you continue to perform smallness just to keep the peace and make people comfortable? Or are you finally ready to express your true potential and attribute it to the source? Honestly, the choice is entirely yours. Thank you so much for joining me as we unpacked this incredible research today. Now go out there, stop shrinking, and elevate the room.